Hey everyone. So the US continues to strike Iran. And what we're going to do in this video is we are going to look at the locations that they have been striking over the last 24 hours or so. And we're going to try to figure out by looking at these locations, what exactly is America doing, and maybe figure out some things about their objectives. But to kick us off, let's look at a short clip of Secretary of State Marco Rubio from yesterday. He was heading out, he's heading out to some meetings in the Far East, and he took some questions from reporters, and he was asked, what are the objectives of the current American waves of strikes? And here's what he had to say.
I think CENTCOM has laid it out exactly what the objectives are. The only reason why the U.S. is conducting strikes is against assets of Iran that are being used to attack global commercial shipping. The Straits of Hormuz are international waterway, and they continue to launch against ships in that international waterway.
Right. So you hear that. I'm going to play a little bit more, but he said the only thing that we're attacking is the assets that they're using to attack global shipping, to attack the shipping through the Straits of Hormuz. Keep that in mind.
Other countries should join us in this effort, but the United States is involved not just in protecting those ships, but in targeting the places that they use to launch these missiles and drones. So that's what you're seeing. That's what the objective of this mission, and that's what it continues to be. And we continue on a daily basis very successfully to degrade Iran's ability to target ships. You hear about the ships that have been struck. You don't hear about the ones that have been defended and the ones they haven't been able to launch against. But as long as Iran insists on controlling an international waterway, we're going to have to respond to that.
Okay, so he says pretty definitively that what they are targeting is those sites that that are being used to obstruct the shipping. Okay, now based on the locations that they've been striking over the last day or so, I'm not exactly sure that's true. We do know that they've been striking bridges. You could argue that bridges are also used to facilitate the strikes because that's how they move equipment and move missiles into the location. So maybe it's for that purpose. But we are seeing some infrastructure like bridges being struck. But we also have reports from today coming out, admittedly from Iranian state media, but you'll see what they're describing there. I think that we have to use this as a starting point to look at a possible shift in the American objectives in these strikes. And it's a little bit different than what Secretary of State Rubio is describing there. So let's start with this. Here's a story from earlier today. U.S. launches new wave of strikes on multiple Iranian cities following an announcement by U.S. Central Command that it had launched a new round of strikes against targets inside Iran. Initial reports indicate explosions have been heard in several cities across the country. And then they list the following cities. And it says these were all heard minutes ago, and this is from 3 a.m. Israel time this morning. And so where were they struck? Tabriz, Chabahar, Konarak, Bandar Mashar, and Bandar Imam Khomeini. Okay, and then we also had this story from a few hours later. Airstrikes target Hormuz in two separate waves. And we also had this. This is responding to a strike from yesterday, but this story is from today. Garibabadi condemns U.S. strike on Darkovin nuclear power plant. Now, this wasn't actually a nuclear power plant. It was a nuclear power plant under construction. It was a construction site. And we saw that the Russians condemned it also, which might indicate that maybe they were involved in the project, which is common. So we're going to take a look at these sites that I just listed here. That's going to be what we're going to do in this video. And we're going to try to look for what do these particular sites indicate about what the American strategy might currently be. Okay, so we're going to go through them one by one. Let's start with Tabriz. So let's first pull them each up on a map. Tabriz is here. Okay, so where's Tabriz? Let's pull back the camera a little and see where it actually is. Tabriz is all the way up here. Whoa, that is nowhere near the Straits of Hormuz. So what on earth is in Tabriz? Well, what's in Tabriz is this site. This is the top jewel of Iran's petrochemical industry. This is the website of the Tabriz Petrochemical Company. It's in Tabriz. So what exactly is this? So here's what it is. Here's Tabriz. It's in the northwest, you see. It's near the Turkish border. and it has an oil refinery that handles about 7% of Iran's total refining capacity. And then it also has this petrochemical company that I pulled up on the screen for you. The Tabriz petrochemical company is located there. But look at where it's located. It's all the way up near Turkey, north of Iraq, near Azerbaijan. Okay? It's very, very far from the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Tabriz petrochemical company makes ethylene, polyethylene, styrene, and industrial feedstocks. But here's what I think is important about why they're targeting it. The Tabriz petrochemical company has been on and off the U.S. sanctions list since 2013. And that's not just because it's state-owned. It tried at one point to procure a heat treatment unit that a nuclear suppliers group member actually blocked over proliferation concerns, meaning they were ordering it, and the nuclear supplier group was like, we're not so sure we should be selling this. The UK flagged it separately in 2015, this company, as an entity of concern for weapons-related procurement. So it's not just a plant that is producing power, like there's a power plant or the petrochemicals or employing people. There's a documented history here of that's tied to militarily relevant purposes, let's say. And it's not the first time it's been hit. It was also hit back in March in the first wave of this war. Okay, so that's Tabriz. Again, so when Marco Rubio says that they're only targeting sites that are related to the shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and keeping shipping lanes open, I don't see any way, if they're striking Tabriz, to put it in that category. Now, the next site we're going to look at is Chabahar. So what is Chabahar? Chabahar is interesting. It's a totally different location. Chabahar is all the way down here. I might as well, I'm going to pull it up on the map so you see the red pin, make life easier for you visually. Chabahar, and here's where it is. It's all the way in the other side of the country from where we just were. Chabahar is a very interesting site because it's right here. This is Chabahar. Okay, Chabahar is all the way down. Let me show it to you on the map. There it is. There's the red pin. So look at where it is. Here's the Strait of Hormuz, and Chabahar is here. This is the Pakistani border. Okay, and here's Pakistan on this side here. You know what? Should we get a bigger pointer? Let's get a bigger pointer. We could do that. Nah, whatever. We'll work with this. So here's Chabahar. So you notice where this port is. It's outside the Strait of Hormuz, but it's not just a port city. So it's overtly military. There's no ambiguity there. It's Iran's only port with direct access to the open ocean, meaning that ships don't have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz to get out, as you can see on the map. The water offshore is very deep, and it's deep enough for submarines. And Iran has built a submarine base there. It has missile boat facilities, Marine Corps infrastructure, and it sits in a geopolitically very important spot. It's right near another port, a port on the Pakistani side, called Gwadar. And Gwadar port is right here. Here's Gwadar port just on the other side of it. And that is a Chinese-run port in Pakistan. Everything in Pakistan is Chinese-run. And India has poured investment into Chabahar. It's actually a joint Indian-Iranian investment, which is a little weird. I talked about it in another video about a month ago. Because India is always challenging China. So you got these two ports that are side by side there, Gwadar and Chabahar. So when a base like this, like Chabahar, gets hit right now, this isn't complicated. This is a military target, and this fits into what Secretary of State Rubio was saying. This is at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, the next location we're going to look at is Konarak. Konarak is right nearby. It's right near Chabahar, but we'll pull up the pin anyway. Okay, so Konarak is like right next to, it's right next to Chabahar. So here's Chabahar and here's Konarak. You see, and they're in the same spot, right? They're both at the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, side by side. What makes Konarak important? What makes it unique? So this is the headquarters of Iran's 3rd Naval District, one of its main installations on the Gulf of Oman. It's been there since before the revolution, since the Shah's time. They've had this there. Satellite imagery earlier in this war showed multiple frigates and smaller vessels that were destroyed or damaged there. So when the U.S. was saying we're destroying the Navy, they were striking this site pretty hard. Again, this is another straightforward military target, nothing complicated here. The next location that was mentioned in that article that we saw is Bandar Mashar. So let's find Bandar Mashar. Bandar Mashar. Here we go. Bandar Mashar. Let's pull it up. And we're all the way here. Ooh, now we're in a different place. We are now all the way inside the Persian Gulf. See where we are? We're all the way deep in the Persian Gulf, right next to Kuwait. That's where Bandar Mashar is. Again, is this about disrupting shipping in the Straits of Hormuz? Highly unlikely that it is. No offense to Secretary of State Rubio. So this is a dual-use site. So now we're back to that. So this is the Khuzestan province, and this is the anchor of Iran's petrochemical special economic zone. So you have the petrochemical company all the way up in the north that I showed you at Tabriz, but this is different. This is a different scale. This is a whole economic zone devoted to the petrochemical industry. There are over 30 plants across around 3,000 hectares, and they employ a huge share of the local population. There's around 300,000 people who are employed in Bandar Mashar in these 30 plants. On paper, it's civilian industry, plastics, fertilizer inputs, basic chemicals. But here's what's really going on, or what else is going on. The site is owned in large part by the Persian Gulf Petrochemical Industry Company. And the U.S. Treasury sanctioned that company back in the first Trump administration in 2019, specifically for funneling billions of dollars to Khatam al-Anbiya. Khatam al-Anbiya is the IRGC's construction and engineering arm. So it's really part of the terrorist network. It's like a construction company, an engineering company that serves the purposes of the IRGC. And on top of that money trail, some of the chemicals produced here, ammonium nitrate, sulfuric acid, toluene, are also inputs for solid rocket propellant and explosives. Israeli officials in past strikes on this complex, because Israel has hit this complex before in the first round of attacks, they've said that the Israelis say outright that the goal in hitting it was to damage infrastructure feeding the ballistic missile program. So that's what this is about. This isn't about the immediate issue of disrupting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. In a more long-term way, it is, because this is an industry that serves their ballistic missile program, but it's also the heart and soul of their petrochemical industry. Okay, it's not just an economic hit; it's also a funding apparatus for the IRGC. It's one of their main businesses, probably their main business, and it's also a materials pipeline for dual-use materials. Okay, now we have another site that's right next to this one called Bandar Imam Khomeini. So where's Bandar Imam Khomeini? I'll get you the pin, but it's really right next to it. It's in the same area. Bandar Imam Khomeini. And it's going to be right there. Okay, so Bandar Imam Khomeini this is Bandar Mashar where we just were. Here's Bandar Imam Khomeini. They're right next to each other. Okay. See that? That's where it is. Also, same spot deep in the Persian Gulf. It's really, in a certain sense, it's part of that same big complex. It's right next door. But this is not the petrochemical industry. This is the port that serves that petrochemical industry. It's the most modern port in Iran. It's the largest port of Iran. And it's the biggest petrochemical export hub. So it moves ethylene, benzene, LPG out into the world. Functionally, it's the same industrial complex as Bandar Mashar that we just looked at, but this is the port infrastructure that's attached to it. So it's also dual use. It has legitimate civilian export purposes, but it's also a revenue and materials pipeline for the IRGC. Okay, now we get to the nuclear power plant that was under construction, Darkhovin. Let's check that out. Darkhovin. Here we go. This is also in the same province in Kazakhstan. Okay, where is that? In that northern province. It's up here. Did we get a pin? Where's our pin? Where's our pin? It'd be nice to get a pin, but here we are. It's right here. So let's keep our eye on it. Yep, same area. This is where the nuclear power plant was. Now, again, let's remember, Marco Rubio said last night that what we're striking is those assets that are being used to disrupt shipping. It's clearly not the case. Okay, this Darkovin, we have a nuclear power plant up here. So if there's a nuclear power plant up here, right near this massive, like basically this city that was created for this massive petrochemical industry city with 30 different companies and 300,000 people employed there. 300,000 people means if you extrapolate that out to families, you're talking about millions of people, like a massive cities where everybody's employed in the petrochemical industry, and there's the big port there, and they're building this nuclear power plant there. So they're really destroying it by hitting the port and Bandar Mashhad and the nuclear power plant under construction. The goal seems to really just be destroy this whole thing. And what is all of this together? If you take it all together, this is the beating heart of their economy. Okay, there's the oil, but then there's the petrochemical industry. It's massive. So I don't think that this or the strike on Tabriz, think about the fact that this is all in the same 24 hours, that they're striking these sites and Tabriz, which is also a massive petrochemical company in the north. It seems to me that the Americans are pivoting now to destroying the Iranian economy, not just through the sanctions and the frozen assets and the other things they've been doing and the blockade, but actually hitting their major industries that are fueling the economy without going directly after the oil sites they're not going after, like Karg Island. But that's what it looks like they're doing. Okay, we have one more site to do. We have one more site to look at. So again, we just looked at Darkovin, at Darkovin, this new nuclear power plant. Now, there's a little bit of history also that's interesting about Darkovin. Before the Iranian Revolution, during the Shah's time, the Iranians had a deal with the French to build 2 reactors at this site. And after the revolution, that went away. And then in the 90s, Iran tried again with China to build a couple reactors. That also fell through. So Darkovin was really like a stalled project. And then in 2008, Iran announced it was building its own reactor there. It was going to be a heavy water reactor. Heavy water reactors are the design you use if plutonium production is part of what you're after. It's a different pathway than light water reactors. I was reading up on this to try to figure out what to say. I don't really know this stuff that well, but I was reading, and apparently it's different. And a light water reactor is what Iran runs at Bushehr with the help from the Russians. And here the Iranians are trying to build a heavy water reactor. Anyway, Darkovin is Iran's attempt to build another heavy water reactor domestically. And the U.S. hit the construction site on yesterday, and Iran is now all upset about it. So we have this news item here, which I had pulled up on the screen earlier, of how upset they are, right? Well, look at that. Gharib Abadi condemns U.S. strike on Darkovin nuclear power plant. Right, the U.S. action constituted a dangerous assault on Iran's peaceful nuclear infrastructure. Right, and we saw that the Russians also, by the way, condemned this attack. The Russians condemned this attack. Like, I don't know if the United States cares that the Russians condemned it, but that's what this is about. Even the language, the Atomic Energy Organization of Iran called this attack a violation of international law, and you're targeting one of Iran's key symbols of scientific progress. That's what it says in the article there. Anyway, that's that one. The last site we're going to look at is Hormuz. Hormuz, let's see where that is. So Hormuz, let's pull it up. Hormuz. Here we go. And this is in Bushehr. So it's all the way down. It's further down south. And where's Hormuz? But it's not so far down south. It is right here. Hormuz. There it is. So this is the Strait of Hormuz. This is where we were just looking at the petrochemical sites. And this is somewhere in between. But it's inside the Persian Gulf. Another site that is really not connected to opening up the Straits of Hormuz. What is significant about Hormuz? So Hormuz is the administrative center of the Dashti district of the Bushehr province on the Persian Gulf coast. And what's significant about it? The strikes knocked out power to several neighborhoods. Now, the Iranians say that they got the power back up very quickly, but satellite imagery has previously identified an underground IRGC ballistic missile base in Hormuz. And it reportedly has 9 portals functioning as launch silos built for rapid-fire ballistic missile launches. Considering how it is right across the water from Kuwait and Bahrain, take a look at the map again. Look at that. Here's Bahrain, here's Kuwait, right? And this here is, what do we have here? Like Saudi Arabia, all the way across here. So if there's a major ballistic missile launch site here, right, what it's being used for. So this is probably designed to protect those the countries across the Gulf who are being attacked. So like Chabahar and Konarak, this is not a dual use site. This is more just a pure military site. It's a military base. It's confirmed as a military target. And that's what I think that those attacks are about, missile sites there. So there's the pattern across the 7 sites. There are the purely military assets we saw, Chabahar, Konarak, and now Hormuz. And we have, which is this underground missile base. And then we have some civilian economic infrastructure, Tabriz, Bandar Mashar, Bandar Imam Khomeini. These are the sites that's the petrochemical industry is being targeted directly. Even though it has some dual use, but it's ostensibly civilian and has nothing to do with the disruption of traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. And that's why I opened with Secretary of State Rubio, but just to kind of frame it that this is not really what's going on. And then you have Darkovin, which is framed as a purely peaceful nuclear infrastructure, but but the reactor design, the heavy water reactor design, the entire category exists because of proliferation concerns. So that's that. Now, one caveat to this whole video, the report that I have that I'm basing myself on for the sites where explosions were reported after CENTCOM attacked is all coming out of Iranian state media. But they didn't give any explanation. They just listed places where explosions were heard. So that's why I'm treating this with some measure of credibility, because it didn't have the smell of propaganda on it. So assuming that these are actually the sites that were hit, I hope this was, this helped us read between the lines and see what's actually going on here. All right. Please drop a comment. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know if you found it helpful. And if you did, please share it. Please like it. Please do all those good things. And please tell other people about what we're doing on this channel. God bless.